Clean the bathroom properly, you useless little thing, and if it's not perfect, you'll go without dinner again. Those were the words I heard when I arrived at my son Michael's house unannounced. My granddaughter Maya, barely 6 years old, was sobbing as she held a rag bigger than her small hands. And the sons of Michael's wife, Aiden and Ethan, were laughing out loud from the sofa, watching television as if nothing was happening. In that moment, my blood ran cold because I had financed that house. I had put up every single dollar so my son could have a decent home, and he was using it to turn my granddaughter into a domestic slave while spoiling the children of his second wife. My name is Carol. I am 69 years old, and for decades, I believed that being a good mother meant staying quiet, enduring, and giving everything without asking for anything in return. I thought unconditional love meant swallowing my pride when my son disrespected me. But that day, seeing my granddaughter cleaning a bathroom while the other children enjoyed privileges that I had paid for, I understood something terrible. I had raised an abuser, and my silence had fueled him for years. Michael was always difficult, but when Maya was born, I thought fatherhood would change him. His first wife, Maya's mother, had died in an accident when the girl was just 3 years old. I prayed to heaven that my son would be a good father to that innocent creature who had lost her mother so young. Then came Veronica, a calculating woman who married Michael knowing I had money. She arrived with her 2 sons, 10-year-old Aiden and 8-year-old Ethan, and from the very first day, she made it clear who the favorites in that house were. My suspicions began when I noticed Maya was always quiet, always scared, always trying to go unnoticed. But what I saw that day surpassed my worst fears. "Why is my granddaughter cleaning while they watch television?" I asked, trying to control the fury boiling inside me. Michael looked at me with contempt, as if my question were stupid. "Because she has to learn responsibility. The other boys already did their chores." A lie. I could see the dirty dishes on the table, toys strewn all over the living room, school backpacks abandoned on the floor. But Maya, my 6-year-old granddaughter, was the only one forced to clean. "She's a child, Michael. She should be playing, not working like a housekeeper." Veronica appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. Her fake smile failed to hide the venom in her eyes. "Oh, Carol, don't exaggerate. The girl needs discipline. Her mother spoiled her rotten before she died." The insult to the memory of Maya's late mother was the straw that broke the camel's back. But I contained myself, knowing what I was capable of doing. That night, when I returned to my apartment, I couldn't sleep. The images of my granddaughter sobbing repeated in my mind like a nightmare. Then I remembered something I had kept secret for years. When Michael asked me for help to buy that house, I didn't just give him the money. I had financed it in my name. The house had been in my name from the beginning, but I never told him. I wanted him to feel independent, to believe he had achieved something on his own. What a huge mistake that act of generosity had been, because now my son was using my own house to torture my granddaughter, and I had the power to stop him. That night, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. The next day, I returned to the house earlier, but this time I didn't ring the doorbell. I used my copy of the key that I had kept since the construction. What I found shattered my soul and confirmed my worst suspicions. Maya was in the kitchen, standing on a chair to reach the dirty breakfast dishes in the sink. Her small hands trembled as she tried not to break anything. At the table, Aiden and Ethan were calmly finishing their sugary cereal, watching videos on Veronica's phone. Michael was reading the newspaper as if he were the king of his castle. "Hurry up, Maya, or we'll be late for school," Veronica yelled from her room. "And don't forget to pack your brother's lunchboxes." Brothers. That word wounded me like a knife. Aiden and Ethan weren't Maya's brothers. They were the spoiled sons of a woman who had turned my granddaughter into her personal servant. I stayed hidden, watching. Maya prepared the lunchboxes with quick, nervous movements. When she put more ham in Aiden's sandwich than in Ethan's, the younger one complained. "Mom, Maya gave me less food than Aiden again." Veronica came down the stairs like a fury. Her bright red dress contrasted with the hateful expression on her face. Without a word, she snatched the lunchbox from Maya and emptied it into the sink. "You're useless. You can't do anything right. That's why your mom died, because she couldn't stand having such a stupid daughter." Maya's silent crying broke my heart. Michael continued reading his newspaper as if nothing was happening, as if his own daughter's tears meant nothing to him. Now you'll have to buy something from the school cafeteria, Veronica continued. Use your birthday money. Birthday money. The money I had given Maya the week before. These monsters were forcing her to use her own gifts to get by. I couldn't stand it anymore. I walked into the kitchen with determined steps. What is going on here? Everyone froze. Michael lowered the newspaper with a guilty expression. Veronica tried to compose a smile, but it was too late. I had seen everything. Carol, what a surprise. We didn't know you were coming so early. Clearly they didn't, because if they had, they might not have been torturing my granddaughter right in front of my nose. Michael stood up, trying to intimidate me with his height. Don't exaggerate, Mom. We're just teaching her responsibilities. Responsibilities? Maya is 6 years old, Michael. What are Aiden's and Ethan's responsibilities? An uncomfortable silence. Aiden and Ethan kept eating as if the conversation had nothing to do with them. They're older, Veronica mumbled. They have other obligations. Like what? Watching television? Playing video games? Because that's the only thing I've seen them do. Every time I come over. The tension in the kitchen was palpable. Maya had instinctively moved closer to me, seeking protection. Her small fingers clung to my skirt. Grandma, I don't want to go to school without a lunch, she whispered. Those words were like a hammer striking my final decision. I took out my wallet and gave Maya some money. Here, sweetheart, buy whatever you want at the cafeteria. Michael snatched the money from my hands. She doesn't need money. We take care of her expenses. You take care of her by forcing her to use her birthday gifts to eat? That's not true, Veronica lied, but her nervous eyes betrayed her. Isn't it true? Maya, tell Grandma where you got the money to buy food last week. My granddaughter looked at me in terror. She knew telling the truth would bring consequences, but she also knew that lying would be wrong. From the money you gave me for my birthday, Grandma. Veronica said I had to learn to manage my money. Michael exploded. That's enough. This is my house, and here, things are done my way. If you don't like it, you can leave. His house. How funny to hear those words come out of his mouth. Your house, Michael? Are you sure about that? Of course it's my house. I paid for it with my hard work. I smiled bitterly. It was time for him to learn the first of many truths he was about to discover. Your work, Michael. Son, I think there are some things you don't know about this house that you love so much. The confident expression on his face began to fade. Veronica grew nervous too. What are you talking about, Mom? I'm talking about the mortgage, Michael. The mortgage that has been in my name since day one. This house was never yours. It has been mine all these years. The color drained from his face. Veronica staggered and had to lean on the table. That's impossible. I signed the papers. You co-signed, son, but I was always the primary loan holder. I have all the documents to prove it. The kitchen plunged into a deathly silence. The only sounds were the ticking of the clock and the agitated breathing of everyone present. Why did you never tell us? Michael asked, his voice breaking. Because I wanted you to feel proud, to believe you had achieved something for yourself. But I see my generosity only fueled your cruelty. Veronica tried to regain control of the situation. Well, anyway, we've been paying the installments for years. We have rights. Rights? Rights to abuse a 6-year-old girl? To turn my house into a hell for my granddaughter? I took Maya's hand. Her small fingers clung to mine desperately. We're leaving, sweetheart. You're coming with me. You can't take her, Michael shouted. She's my daughter. Your daughter. The same daughter you forced to work as a housekeeper? The same daughter who cries every night because she's insulted and humiliated? I headed for the door, but Michael blocked my path. You're not taking Maya, and this conversation is over. It's my house, and my rules are respected. Your house, I repeated, pulling out my phone. Perfect. Then you won't have a problem with what I'm about to do right now? I dialed the bank's number. Michael and Veronica looked at me with growing terror. Good morning. This is Carol Peterson. I want to cancel the mortgage on the house located at. Hang up that phone right now, Michael screamed, trying to snatch the phone from me. But it was too late. The bank executive was on the other end of the line, confirming my identity and the property details. Mrs. Peterson, I understand you wish to cancel your mortgage. Are you sure about this decision? Once the process is initiated, there is no turning back. Completely sure, I replied, not taking my eyes off the terrified faces of Michael and Veronica. I want to cancel the financing immediately. I will not pay another installment. Veronica lunged at me, but I stopped her with an icy glare. What does that mean exactly? The executive asked. Do you wish to sell the property or transfer the loan? It means I'm canceling everything. The property can be released for the bank to do whatever they deem necessary. I am completely disassociating myself from the financing. I understand. In that case, the property will go into foreclosure. The current occupants will have a period of 30 days to vacate or reach a direct purchase agreement with the bank. Perfect. Send me all the documents by email. My address is… You're crazy, Veronica shrieked. You can't do this. We have children. You're right, I said, hanging up the phone. You have children, 3 children, but you only care about 2 of them. Michael had been struck dumb, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. His face alternated between disbelief and fury. Mom, this is insane. We can talk, reach an agreement. An agreement? Like the agreement to turn your daughter into a domestic servant? Like the agreement to let your wife insult the memory of Maya's mother? Aiden and Ethan, who had been silent until then, began to understand that something serious was happening. Mom, what does it mean we have to leave the house? Aiden asked. Veronica didn't know what to say. Her plans for a comfortable life were crumbling before her eyes. It means Maya's grandmother is a selfish woman who doesn't think about the consequences of her actions, she said with venom in her voice. Selfish? For protecting my granddaughter from abuse? For not allowing my own house to be turned into a place of torture? Maya was still clinging to my hand, but now there was something different in her gaze. For the first time in a long time, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Does this mean I won't have to clean the bathroom anymore? She asked in her trembling little voice. That innocent question was like a slap in the face to Michael. He finally seemed to realize the reality of what he had been doing. Maya, sweetie, you don't have to clean anything. That was just to teach you. To teach me what, Daddy? To teach me that I'm a useless little thing, like Veronica says? To teach me that's why my mommy died? The silence that followed was devastating. Michael looked at Veronica with accusing eyes. You told her that? You told her that her mother died because of her? Veronica became defensive. I never said that exactly. I just said. You said her mother couldn't stand having such a stupid daughter, I interrupted. I heard it with my own ears 5 minutes ago. Michael put his hands on his head. For a moment, he seemed to recognize the monstrosity of the situation. Veronica, how could you say something like that? It was a joke. Kids exaggerate everything. A joke? Calling a 6-year-old girl stupid is a joke? Forcing her to work like a housekeeper is a joke? Veronica's mask finally fell. Her true nature came to light. That girl needs discipline. Her mother spoiled her, and now she's a spoiled brat who doesn't want to do anything. My sons are polite and responsible. Responsible? When was the last time Aiden or Ethan cleaned anything? When was the last time they packed their own lunch? Veronica couldn't answer because the answer was obvious. Never. Your sons are spoiled brats who got used to having a 6-year-old slave, I continued. And you are an abuser who took advantage of an orphaned girl to have a free maid. You have no right to talk to me like that. I have every right in the world. This is my house, Veronica, my house. And in my house, children are not mistreated. Michael tried to mediate, but it was too late. The damage was done, and there was no turning back. Mom, please, we can change. We can do things differently. Change? After years of abuse? After turning your own daughter into a servant? I took out my phone again and started taking pictures. Pictures of the dirty dishes Maya had been washing. Pictures of the chair she had used to reach the sink. Pictures of her small hands, chapped from the cleaning chemicals. What are you doing? Veronica asked in a panic, documenting the evidence. Because this isn't over. Evidence of what? Of child abuse, of neglect, of psychological mistreatment. Michael paled. Mom, you can't be serious, can't I? Do you think I'm going to let my granddaughter continue to live in these conditions? Do you think I'm going to let you keep torturing her? I took Maya in my arms. She snuggled against me like a frightened kitten. We're leaving, my love. You're going to come live with me. You can't take her, Michael yelled. I'm her father. You're her biological father, but you haven't acted like one. A father protects his children. He doesn't turn them into slaves. I walked toward the door with Maya in my arms. Michael followed me, desperate. Mom, please, we can fix this. I promise things will be different. I stopped at the threshold and looked him in the eyes. In that moment, I saw the boy I had raised, the young man I had educated with so much love, but I also saw the man he had become, and it broke my heart. Do you know what's saddest about all of this, Michael? That your daughter is going to grow up remembering that her own grandmother had to rescue her from you. With those words, I left the house, taking Maya with me. Behind us, I heard Veronica's screams and Michael's pleas, but there was no turning back. The war had begun. That same afternoon, while Maya took a nap in my apartment for the first time in years, without the fear of being woken up to do chores, my phone didn't stop ringing. Michael called every 5 minutes, alternating between desperate pleas and veiled threats. Mom, you have to bring Maya back. Veronica is hysterical, and I don't know what to do. Learn to live with the consequences of your actions, Michael. You're my mother. You're supposed to support me. I'm your mother, not your accomplice. And I am definitely not an accomplice to child abuse. I hung up the phone, but it rang again immediately. This time it was Veronica. Carol, this is kidnapping. I'm going to call the police if you don't bring Maya back immediately. Go ahead, call the police. It will be very interesting for them to hear why a 6-year-old girl has hands chapped from cleaning chemicals. The silence on the other end confirmed that Veronica knew perfectly well that the law was not on her side. Besides, I continued, I have something that will interest you very much. I opened my phone's recording app. For weeks, I had been secretly documenting my visits to the house. I had recordings of Veronica yelling at Maya, of Michael ignoring his daughter's cries, of the other children laughing while my granddaughter was humiliated. What is that? Veronica asked, her voice trembling. Your voice telling a 6-year-old girl that she's useless, and that's why her mother died. Would you like the whole neighborhood to hear this? You were recording us? Of course. When a grandmother suspects her granddaughter is being abused, she takes precautions. And I have hours of recordings, Veronica. Hours. I hung up the phone and put it on silent. I needed to think clearly and plan my next moves. While I was making dinner for Maya, I reflected on the years of willful blindness. All the signs had been there. Maya's dark circles, her unusual silence, the way she flinched when someone raised their voice. I had seen them, but I had chosen to believe Michael's explanations. She's shy, he would say. She's grieving for her mother, he would justify. Kids can be dramatic, he would minimize. How foolish I had been, how blind and how cowardly. Maya woke up from her nap and came to me in the kitchen. Her big eyes still reflected distrust, as if she expected me to order her to clean something at any moment. Grandma, do I have to help you with dinner? No, my love. You just have to be a little girl. Play, laugh, learn, nothing more. She stood there, as if she didn't understand the concept of not having obligations. But, who's going to clean? I'm going to clean, Maya. Adults clean, children play. And if I don't clean well, will you punish me? Those words pierced me like daggers. I knelt in front of her and took her small hands in mine. Listen to me very carefully, my love. I will never, ever punish you for not cleaning. I will never yell at you. I will never call you useless. And I will never, ever allow anyone else to do so. For the first time in a long time, I saw a genuine smile on my granddaughter's face. That night, after putting Maya to bed, I called my lawyer. Samuel was an older man, experienced in family law cases, and had been a friend of my late husband. Carol, it's good to hear from you. How can I help? I told him the whole situation. The abuse, the recordings, the cancellation of the mortgage, my decision to take Maya. It's a complex case, Samuel admitted. Michael is the biological father, but you have evidence of neglect and abuse. The recordings are very valuable. Can I get custody? It's possible, especially if we demonstrate that the environment in Michael's home is harmful to the child. Has the girl expressed a desire to stay with you? Yes, but she's afraid to say it openly. I understand. We'll need a psychological evaluation of both the child and the family environment. I also recommend you document everything. Changes in Maya's behavior, physical evidence of abuse, testimonies from neighbors if there are any. The neighbors, I murmured. I hadn't thought of that. One of them might have seen or heard something, possibly. The house is in a small residential development. The walls aren't very thick. Perfect. Tomorrow we'll start the legal proceedings. In the meantime, document everything you can about Maya's physical and emotional state. After hanging up, I sat in my living room to plan. The legal battle would be long and painful, but I had no alternative. I couldn't let my granddaughter return to that hell. Around 10 o'clock at night, I heard noises at the door. Someone was trying to open it with keys. My heart raced until I remembered Michael had a copy of my keys from years ago. The door opened, and Michael stormed in like a hurricane, followed by Veronica. Their faces reflected desperation and fury. "Where is my daughter?" Michael yelled. "Sleeping, as a child should be at this hour, instead of cleaning bathrooms. Stop repeating that lie. Maya doesn't clean bathrooms." I took out my phone and played one of the recordings. Michael's voice filled the apartment. "Clean the bathroom properly, you useless little thing. And if it's not perfect, you'll go without dinner again." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael collapsed onto the sofa, finally confronting the reality of his own words. I didn't mean to say that. I was stressed from work, from the bills. Stress gives you the right to abuse a 6-year-old girl? Veronica, who had remained silent, finally exploded. "This is all your fault. You spoiled her. You put strange ideas in her head." Strange ideas? Like the idea that she deserves to be treated with dignity? That girl needed discipline, and you wouldn't let her have it. Discipline? Calling her useless is discipline? Comparing her to her dead mother is discipline? Michael lifted his head, his eyes filled with tears. "Mom, please, can we fix this? Veronica can change. I can change. How have you changed over the last 3 years? How did you change while I was paying for your house and you were turning my granddaughter into your servant?" Suddenly, a small voice came from the hallway. "Grandma, why are they shouting?" Maya appeared in the living room, rubbing her eyes. Upon seeing Michael and Veronica, she immediately hid behind me. "I don't want to go home," she whispered. "Please, Grandma, don't make me go." Those words were the final blow for Michael. He realized that his own daughter was afraid of him. "I don't want to go home." "Please, Grandma, don't make me go." Those words from Maya echoed in the apartment like a sentence. Michael was frozen, watching as his own daughter hid behind me as if he were a monster. "Maya, sweetie, I'm your daddy," he said in a broken voice, trying to get closer. Maya clung tighter to my robe. "I don't want to clean any more bathrooms. I don't want Veronica to yell at me. I don't want to be a useless little thing." Veronica completely lost her temper. "You see what you've done? You've brainwashed her against us." "Brainwashed her, Veronica?" "She's repeating your own words, the same words I have recorded on my phone." Michael knelt in front of Maya, but she hid further behind me. "Princess, Daddy didn't want to hurt you. Daddy loves you very much. Is that why you make me clean while Aiden and Ethan play?" Maya asked with devastating innocence. There was no answer to that question. Michael knew any justification would sound pathetic. "Maya, come here right now," Veronica ordered in her usual authoritarian tone. "Stop the drama." Maya's reaction was immediate. She burst into tears and hid completely behind me, her small body trembling with fear. "Veronica, that's enough," I exploded. "Can't you see she's terrified of you? Don't you realize the damage you've done? That girl is a manipulator. She's faking it to get your pity." Samuel had arrived without us noticing. He had used the key I had given him for emergencies. "Pardon the interruption," he said with professional calm. I heard the shouting from the hallway and was concerned for the minor's safety. "Who are you?" Michael asked, standing up. "Samuel Vega, Mrs. Peterson's attorney, and a witness to what I have just observed." Veronica turned pale, realizing that a lawyer had heard her yelling at a 6-year-old girl. "This is a setup," she muttered. "It's not a setup, ma'am. It's documentation of a pattern of abuse that is already under investigation." Michael turned to me with accusing eyes. "You've already started legal proceedings?" "Of course I have. Did you think I was going to let you continue to abuse my granddaughter? Samuel approached Maya gently. Hi there, little one. I'm Samuel, a friend of your grandma's. Can you tell me how you feel when you're at home with your dad and Veronica? Maya lifted her tear-streaked face. I'm scared. I'm always scared of doing something wrong and getting yelled at. And here with your grandma, how do you feel? Safe. I don't have to clean, and nobody yells at me. Samuel was taking mental notes of every word. Each of Maya's answers was additional evidence for our case. This is manipulation, Veronica shouted. You're putting ideas in her head. Ma'am, Samuel said firmly, I suggest you lower your voice in the presence of the minor. Everything you are saying can be used in the legal process. Michael finally seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. He sat down heavily on the sofa, his hands on his head. Mom, this is getting out of control. We just wanted Maya to be more responsible. Responsible? Michael. She's 6 years old. Her only responsibility should be to be happy. The other kids. The other kids are not your children, I interrupted him. Maya is, and you abandoned her to please a woman who hates her. Veronica became furious. I don't hate anyone. I just wanted her to learn discipline. Discipline is telling her that her mother died because she couldn't stand to have such a stupid daughter. Samuel raised his eyebrows. Even for an experienced lawyer, that revelation was shocking. Did she say that to the child? He asked, turning to me. I have it on tape, I confirmed. That constitutes severe psychological abuse, Samuel declared. It's enough to request immediate protective measures. Michael stood up abruptly. That's it. Maya, we're going home right now. As he approached us, Maya screamed with genuine terror. No, I don't want to go. Grandma, don't let me go. Her panic was so real, so gut-wrenching, that even Michael stopped in his tracks. Sir, Samuel intervened. As you can see, the minor is exhibiting clear signs of post-traumatic stress. Forcing her to return to an environment she perceives as threatening would be counterproductive. She's my daughter, and I'm her grandmother, and so far I'm the only one who has protected her. Veronica, desperate to regain control, played her dirtiest card. Michael, if you don't bring Maya home, I'm taking my sons and leaving you. Is that what you want? To lose your whole family over this spoiled little girl? The silence that followed was terrible. We all waited for Michael's response. That moment would define who he really was as a father and as a man. Michael looked at Maya, who was still trembling behind me. Then he looked at Veronica, who was waiting with her arms crossed and a defiant expression. Veronica? Maya is not spoiled. She's my daughter. And if you can't accept her as part of the family, then maybe what? Veronica challenged him. Maybe the problem isn't Maya. Maybe the problem is you. For the first time in years, I saw a glimmer of the man I had raised. But Veronica wasn't going to give up so easily. Fine. I'll pack my things and leave with my sons tomorrow. And when you're all alone, without a house, and without a family, you'll remember this moment. Without a house? Michael asked, confused. Samuel smiled with satisfaction. Ah, she didn't tell you. The bank has already initiated foreclosure proceedings on the property. You have 28 days to vacate. Veronica's face completely fell apart. Her plans to blackmail Michael crumbled as she realized she would lose the house too. That can't be legal, she stammered. It's completely legal, Samuel confirmed. Mrs. Peterson was the primary holder of the mortgage. She had the right to cancel it whenever she wanted. Michael turned to me with a mix of respect and terror. Mom, you've destroyed my life. No, son. You destroyed your life when you chose to abuse your own daughter. I just stopped being your accomplice. The following days were a whirlwind of revelations and consequences. Michael and Veronica had returned to the house that was in foreclosure, but the atmosphere had turned toxic. Without the power she derived from abusing Maya, Veronica directed all her fury at Michael. It's your fault, we lost everything, she would scream day and night, for not knowing how to control your mother, and that brat. The neighbors started talking. Brenda, who lived in the house next door, came to visit me with information that chilled my blood. Carol, I have to tell you something. For months, I heard screaming and crying, but I thought it was just normal kid tantrums. What kind of screaming, Brenda? a little voice saying, "I can't, it's too heavy." Or, I'm sorry, I won't do it again." Now that I know what was happening, I feel terrible for not intervening. Did you hear anything else? Yes. About a month ago, I heard Veronica yell at someone, "Your mother died because God got tired of seeing how useless you were." I thought she was on the phone, but now I understand she was saying it to Maya. Every testimony was another stab in my heart, but also crucial evidence for the legal case. Meanwhile, Maya was flourishing in my apartment. In just 1 week, her transformation was remarkable. She smiled more, played without fear, and for the first time in a long time, acted like the 6-year-old girl she was. "Grandma, can I help you cook?" she asked me one afternoon. "Of course, sweetheart, but only because you want to, not because you have to." "What's the difference?" That question broke my heart. A 6-year-old child shouldn't know the difference between wanting to help and being forced to work. The difference is that when you want to do something, it's fun. When you're forced, it's scary. "Oh, then I want to help you because it's fun to be with you." The legal process moved forward quickly. Samuel had requested a temporary restraining order to keep Maya in my care while the permanent custody was being resolved. The judge, after reviewing the recordings and testimonies, agreed to a temporary order. Michael attempted one last desperate maneuver. He came to my apartment one night, alone, his eyes red from crying. "Mom, Veronica left. She took her kids and left me. I'm alone in that empty house, just waiting for the eviction day. I'm sorry, Michael, but decisions have consequences. I know I was wrong. I know Veronica manipulated the situation, and I was a coward. But Maya is my daughter. Let me fix things." How do you plan to fix 3 years of psychological abuse? With time? With patience? With love? "I can change, Mom. I can be the father Maya deserves." I looked at my son, the man I had raised with so much love, and I saw both the child he had been and the failure he had become. "Michael, do you know what your biggest mistake was?" "What?" "It wasn't letting Veronica abuse Maya. It was actively participating in that abuse. It was becoming her accomplice. But I never. You yelled at her to clean the bathroom. You called her a useless little thing. You allowed her to use her birthday money to eat. Don't just blame Veronica." The silence stretched between us. For the first time, Michael seemed to truly understand the magnitude of his mistakes. "Is there any chance you can forgive me?" he finally asked. "Forgiveness is between you and your conscience, Michael. But Maya's custody is between the judge and the evidence." The next day, something unexpected happened. Michael posted a video on his social media, a video that would change the entire course of events. "My name is Michael Peterson, and I need to confess something that is killing me inside," the video began. "For the last 3 years, I allowed my wife to abuse my 6-year-old daughter. Not only did I allow it, but I participated in that abuse." My phone started ringing immediately. It was friends, neighbors, acquaintances who had seen the video. "There are no excuses for what I did," Michael continued in the recording. "My daughter Maya was turned into a housekeeper in her own home. She was forced to clean, to cook, to serve other children while being insulted and humiliated." Tears streamed down his face as he spoke. "My mother, Carol, tried to protect Maya, and I treated her like she was a meddler. I now understand that she was the only responsible adult in this whole situation." The video went viral within hours. The comments were devastating for Michael, but they also showed massive support for Maya and me. How horrific. How can anyone treat a child like that? The grandmother is a hero for saving her granddaughter. That man doesn't deserve to be a father. Thank God that little girl has a grandmother to protect her. But more worrying comments also arrived. People who had recognized our address, who wanted to help in unsolicited ways. Samuel recommended that I temporarily change my residence for safety. "Michael's video was brave, but also dangerous," he explained. "You are now public figures. You need protection." That same afternoon, while I was packing some things to move temporarily to a hotel, Maya asked me a question that left me speechless. "Grandma, does my daddy still love me?" "Of course he loves you, sweetheart. He just got very confused and made some very bad decisions." "Is that why he made the video? To say that he loves me?" "I think so, Maya. I think he finally realized his mistakes. Does that mean I have to go back with him? The question I had been dreading finally arrived, and I didn't have an easy answer. I don't know, my love. A judge who knows a lot about what's best for children will decide that. And if the judge says I have to go back, then you will go back, but I will always be there watching over you. You will never be alone again. Maya hugged me tightly, and in that embrace, I felt the full weight of the responsibility I had taken on. Not only had I rescued my granddaughter from abuse, but I had unleashed a media storm that could have unpredictable consequences. But as I felt her small arms around my neck and listened to her calm breathing, I knew I had made the right decision, even if the price was the complete destruction of my family. The viral video from Michael unleashed a media storm that none of us had anticipated. In less than 48 hours, journalists were camped outside the building where we were temporarily staying. News channels wanted exclusive interviews. Social media was filled with hashtags like Justice for Maya and Hero Grandma. But the threats also came. Women who defended Veronica, claiming I had exaggerated the situation. Men who attacked Michael for betraying his wife. The hotel phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, television producers, and people offering to tell our story. "Grandma, why are there so many people outside?" Maya asked, peeking through the hotel window. "Because the story of what happened to you became very famous, my love. A lot of people want to know about you." "Is it bad to be famous?" "It's not bad, but it can be complicated. That's why we're going to stay here for a while until everything calms down." Samuel arrived that afternoon with news that left me cold. "Carol, we have a problem. Veronica has hired a lawyer and is fighting back." "How is that possible?" "We have all the proof. Her strategy is smart and dangerous. She's saying that you manipulated the whole situation to take the granddaughter away from Michael, that the recordings were edited, and that Maya was coached to lie. That's ridiculous. The recordings are authentic. We know that. But she's using Michael's video as evidence that he was pressured by you to confess something he didn't do." Veronica's audacity left me speechless. After years of abusing an innocent child, she was now playing the victim. "There's more," Samuel continued. "Veronica is giving television interviews. She says Maya was a problem child, a liar, and needed special discipline. She also claims you manipulated her against her from a young age." That same night, I saw Veronica's interview on the evening news. She was perfectly made up, dressed in a pink outfit that made her look maternal and vulnerable. "Maya was a very difficult child from the moment I joined the family," she said with tears in her eyes. "She had lost her mother and channeled her pain by hurting others. My sons lived in terror of her tantrums." "Tantrums," I muttered, feeling indignation rise in my chest. "Carol never accepted me as part of the family," Veronica continued. "From the first day, she tried to sabotage my relationship with Michael. She filled Maya's head with lies about me." "And the recordings where you're heard abusing the child?" the journalist asked. "Those recordings are edited. They were taken out of context. Carol is a very intelligent woman and knows how to manipulate technology." "Liar!" I shouted at the television. Maya approached me, worried by my reaction. "Is it true what Veronica is saying, Grandma? Was I bad?" I knelt in front of her and took her small hands. "Listen to me carefully, Maya. You were never bad. You are a good, smart, and loving girl. Veronica is lying because she's afraid of going to jail. Can Veronica go to jail? If the judge decides that what she did to you was very bad, yes. And my daddy too?" That question broke my heart. I didn't know how to explain the complexities of the legal system to a 6-year-old. "I don't know, my love. But I am going to make sure that you are never hurt again." The next day, Samuel arrived with more bad news. Veronica's lawyer has requested an emergency hearing. He wants an independent psychologist to evaluate Maya to determine if she's been manipulated. And is that bad? It could be complicated. If the psychologist determines that Maya was influenced by you, it could affect our case. But Maya is telling the truth. We know that, but 6-year-old children are vulnerable to suggestion. Veronica's lawyer is going to argue that the girl is only repeating what you taught her to say. That afternoon, I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was Michael. "Mom, I need to see you. It's urgent." "What happened?" "Veronica threatened me." She said that if I don't retract my confession and declare that you forced me to lie, she's going to sue me for defamation. And what did you tell her? To go to hell. But I'm scared, Mom. Her lawyer says he can prove I was under emotional distress when I made the video. Michael, do you regret telling the truth? I regret taking so long to tell it. Then stand firm. The truth always comes out. There's something else. Veronica hired a public relations firm. They're going to launch a media campaign to destroy your reputation. What kind of campaign? They're going to say you're a vengeful woman who destroyed a happy family out of jealousy. That you manipulated Maya against us from a young age. That you canceled the mortgage out of spite. Let them say what they want. I have a clear conscience. Mom, don't you understand? These people know how to manage public opinion. They can turn you into the villain of the story. That night, browsing the internet, I found the first articles of Veronica's smear campaign. The headlines were devastating. Manipulative grandmother destroys family over jealousy. The truth behind the Maya case. A vengeful woman. Experts claim the child was coached to lie. The comments on social media began to change. People who had supported me before were now questioning my motives. What if the grandma is lying? Something doesn't add up in this story. Grandmothers can be very toxic when they don't get their way. Poor Veronica. They destroyed her life for nothing. Maya noticed my sadness as I read the comments. Are you sad, Grandma? A little, my love, but don't worry. Is it because people are saying mean things about you? How do you know that? Because Aiden sent me a message. My blood ran cold. Aiden wrote to you? How? On the tablet. He says his mom is going to make them put you in jail for being a liar. I took the tablet and saw the message. It was not only cruel, but it revealed that Veronica was using her own children to intimidate Maya. Maya is coming home soon, and she's going to pay for all the lies she made up, the message read. In that moment, I knew the war had escalated to a dangerous level. Veronica didn't just want to win the legal case. She wanted to destroy me completely. But she had underestimated my determination, and she was about to discover that when a grandmother fights to protect her grandchild, there are no limits to what she is willing to do. The threatening message from Aiden was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was time to go on the offensive. For days, I had endured Veronica's media attacks, watching as she tried to turn me into the villain of a story where she was the real abuser. But using her own children to intimidate Maya crossed a line I could not tolerate. Samuel, I need you to organize a press conference, I told him on the phone that morning. Are you sure? Veronica's campaign is working. It could be dangerous to expose yourself more. That's precisely why I need to speak. People are only hearing one side of the story. What do you have in mind? To show all the evidence. The complete, unedited recordings, the neighbors' testimonies, the medical evidence of Maya's chapped hands. Everything. That afternoon, while preparing my presentation, I received an unexpected call. It was Patty, another neighbor who had lived near the house. Carol, I saw that woman's interviews on television, and I couldn't stay silent. I have something that might help you. What is it, Patty? Videos. I have videos from my security camera where you can see the little girl cleaning the yard while the other children play in the pool. My heart raced. Videos? Why didn't you show them to me before? Because I didn't know they would be important. But when I saw that woman saying it was all a lie, I checked my archives. I have recordings from the last 6 months. Can you bring them to me? I'm on my way. When Patty arrived at the hotel with a flash drive, my hands trembled as I saw the images. There was Maya, just 6 years old, dragging a hose bigger than she was to water the plants while Aiden and Ethan splashed around in the pool. In another video, the little girl was seen hanging clothes on the line, standing on an unstable chair that almost made her fall. This is pure gold, Samuel murmured when he saw the recordings. Veronica won't be able to deny this. There's more, Patty said. In this video, you can hear when Veronica yells at her from the window. We turned up the volume and clearly heard Veronica's voice. Maya, move that lazy butt. If you're not done by 5, there's no dinner. What time was this recorded? Samuel asked. At 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. A 6-year-old girl working in the sun while the other kids are in the pool. The press conference was scheduled for the next day. Samuel contacted the main media outlets, assuring them they would have access to never-before-seen evidence. That night, Michael came to the hotel. He looked destroyed, with deep dark circles and wrinkled clothes. "Mom, Veronica is going crazy. She says if I don't declare that you forced me to lie, she will destroy you completely. Let her do what she wants, Michael. I'm not afraid anymore. But I am afraid of what might happen to Maya if this gets out of control." "Now you're worried about Maya? Where was that concern when you were forcing her to clean bathrooms?" Michael collapsed into a chair, defeated. "You're right. I'm a coward and a bad father, but I want to change. I want to make things right. Then tomorrow, you will be at that press conference supporting me. You will confirm every word I say. And if Veronica follows through on her threats? Michael, what's the worst that can happen? I lose my reputation? People hate me? I've already lost my family. I've already lost my peace of mind. The only thing I have left is my granddaughter, and I will fight for her until my last breath." The next day, the hotel conference room was packed with journalists, cameras, and onlookers. Samuel had prepared a flawless presentation with all the evidence organized chronologically. "Good morning," I began, trying to control my nerves. "My name is Carol Peterson, and for the last few days, many lies have been spread about me and my granddaughter. Today, you are going to know the whole truth." I started by showing the first audio recordings where Veronica was clearly heard abusing Maya. Then, I played the videos from the security cameras. The silence in the room was absolute. "This is my 6-year-old granddaughter, working as a housekeeper while other children in the same house are playing," I explained as I projected the video of the yard. Some journalists shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others scribbled notes frantically. "Why did you take so long to intervene?" a reporter asked. "Because I believed my son's excuses. Because I thought I was exaggerating. Because I didn't want to see the reality," I answered honestly. "That is my biggest mistake, and I will have to live with it forever." "Is it true you canceled the mortgage on the house out of revenge?" another journalist asked. "I canceled the mortgage because my money was being used to maintain a house where my granddaughter was being abused. I was not going to be an economic accomplice to abuse." Then came the most difficult moment. Samuel played the recording where Veronica told Maya that her mother had died because she couldn't stand having such a stupid daughter. The effect was immediate. Several journalists exchanged horrified looks. A female reporter brought her hand to her mouth, visibly shocked. "Those are the exact words that Veronica Ruiz said to my 6-year-old granddaughter," I declared. "Can anyone explain to me how that is normal discipline?" At that moment, Michael stood up from the back of the room. "I want to confirm every word my mother said," he declared with a firm voice. "I allowed that abuse. I participated in it. And now I will do everything I can to repair the damage." The murmur in the room grew. The camera flashes intensified. "Mr. Peterson, are you saying your viral video was spontaneous?" a journalist asked. "I'm saying my video was overdue. I should have spoken up years ago. I should have protected my daughter from day one." A journalist raised her hand. "Where is Veronica Ruiz now?" "Probably watching this conference and preparing more lies," I replied. "But it doesn't matter what she says anymore. The truth is here, documented, recorded, and undeniable." At the end of the conference, journalists approached with more questions, but I had already said everything I needed to say. That night, the main newscasts opened with our story. The hashtags changed from number manipulative grandma to number justice for Maya and number Veronica Ruiz abuser. The comments on social media completely turned in our favor. "How dare that woman deny the evidence? Those videos are devastating. Poor little girl, the grandmother is a hero. She saved her granddaughter. Veronica Ruiz should be in jail." But I knew the war wasn't over yet. Veronica was cunning and vengeful, and women like her never go down without a fight. The press conference had completely changed the public narrative, but Veronica wouldn't give up so easily. 2 days after the irrefutable evidence came to light, she attempted her most desperate and dangerous move. It was a Sunday morning when Samuel called me urgently. "Carol, Veronica has kidnapped Aiden and Ethan. She disappeared with them last night and left a threatening note." "What does the note say?" "That if you don't drop all the lawsuits and hand over Maya, Michael will never see his stepsons again." My blood ran cold. A woman capable of abusing an innocent child was perfectly capable of using her own children as human shields. Where could she be? The police have already issued a national alert, but you know Veronica better than anyone. Where do you think she might hide? I thought quickly. Veronica had mentioned her brother several times, who lived in another state, a man just as toxic who had always unconditionally supported her. Call the police and tell them to look at Enrique Ruiz's house, Veronica's brother. He lives in a small town in Ohio. While we waited for news, Michael arrived at the hotel, completely distraught. Mom, this is my fault. If I hadn't made that video, Veronica wouldn't have gone crazy like this. Michael, Veronica was already unhinged. Now she's just desperate. And if she hurts Aiden and Ethan, she's not going to hurt her own sons. She loves them, in her toxic way, but she loves them. She's using them as her last card. What are we going to do? Wait, and trust that justice will work. 3 hours later, Samuel received the call we were waiting for. The police had found Veronica at a country house owned by her brother. Aiden and Ethan were fine, but Veronica had barricaded herself inside and was threatening to harm herself if anyone approached. She wants to talk to you, Samuel told me. She says she'll only negotiate with Maya's grandmother. Is it safe? The police negotiators will be present, but you're not obligated to do it. I looked at Maya, who was playing peacefully on the hotel bed, finally free from the fear that had dominated her life for years. I'll talk to her. It's time for this to end, once and for all. The drive to Ohio felt eternal. During the trip, I mentally rehearsed what I would say to Veronica. I couldn't show weakness, but I also couldn't provoke her into hurting those innocent children. The country house was surrounded by police cars and ambulances. The lead negotiator briefed me on the situation. She's on the second floor with both boys. She's threatening to jump out the window if anyone comes up, but she agreed to speak with you on the phone. I took the phone with trembling hands. Hello, Veronica. Carol. Her voice was hoarse, desperate. Look what you've done. You've destroyed my life. You've destroyed my family. Veronica, you destroyed your own life when you decided to abuse an innocent child. That girl hated me from day one. She was constantly sabotaging me. Veronica, she was 3 years old when you came into her life. She was a baby who had just lost her mother. Lies. She was manipulative from a young age. You trained her to hate me. I took a deep breath. It was useless to reason with her, but I had to try for the sake of Aiden and Ethan. Veronica, Aiden, and Ethan are not to blame for any of this. Let them go, and we'll talk, just you and me. They're my sons. They're the only thing I have left after you destroyed everything. No one is going to take them from you if you let them go right now. Liar, they'll take them away from me just like you took Maya from Michael. Veronica, listen to me carefully. If you hurt those boys, you will go to prison forever. If you let them go now, we can reach an agreement. What kind of agreement? I looked at the negotiator, who gave a slight nod. I will drop some of the charges. I will allow you to see your sons with supervision. But you have to surrender right now. And Maya? Maya stays with me. That's non-negotiable. The silence on the other end stretched for eternal minutes. Veronica, are you there? Aiden wants to talk to you, she finally said, her voice breaking. Hello, Mrs. Peterson. I heard Aiden's frightened little voice. My mom is crying a lot and says it's all Maya's fault. Aiden, sweetheart, none of this is Maya's fault. Your mom is just very confused. Is it true that we did bad things to Maya? That question broke my heart. Aiden was 10 years old and was finally understanding the reality of what had happened. Yes, Aiden, you did bad things, but you were little and you didn't know it was wrong. I used to laugh when she cried. Does that make me bad? No, sweetheart. It makes you a child who was misguided. But you can change. You can be better. Will Maya forgive me? Maya has a very big heart. But first, you need your mom to let you both leave that house. Mom, I heard Aiden say to Veronica, Mrs. Peterson says Maya can forgive us if we say we're sorry. Give me that phone, Veronica yelled. Carol. Her voice had changed. It sounded defeated. Can Maya really forgive us? Sylvia, Maya is a 6-year-old girl. Her heart is full of love, not hate. But first, you have to let your sons out of there. And then what? Do I go to jail? Possibly. But your sons will remember that in the end, you did the right thing. Another long silence. Carol. Yes. I really thought I was doing the right thing. I thought Maya needed discipline. I know, Veronica, but abusing a child is never the answer. Can you? Can you tell Maya that I wasn't always bad? That in the beginning, I tried to love her? For the first time in this whole process, I heard something resembling genuine remorse in Veronica's voice. I'll tell her, Veronica. But only if you do the right thing now. Okay. I'm coming down with the boys. 20 minutes later, I saw Veronica walk out of the house with Aiden and Ethan. Holding her hands, the boys ran toward the paramedics, while Veronica surrendered to the police without resistance. When our eyes met, I saw something in hers that I hadn't seen before, the acceptance of defeat, and perhaps a glimmer of understanding of the damage she had caused. 6 months later, the judge ruled in my favor in the custody case. Maya would stay with me permanently, while Michael would have supervised visits on the weekends. Veronica was sentenced to 2 years in prison for child abuse and an additional year for the kidnapping of her own sons. Now, as I write this story, Maya is in the backyard playing with her dolls, laughing as a 7-year-old girl should laugh. Her hands are no longer chapped from cleaning chemicals. Her eyes no longer reflect fear, but curiosity and joy. Michael comes to visit her every Saturday, and he's attending therapy. Slowly, very slowly, he is learning to be the father Maya always deserved. Aiden and Ethan are living with Veronica's sister, who turned out to be a more stable woman than we expected. They come to visit us once a month, and little by little, they are developing a healthy relationship with Maya. Grandma, Maya says to me as we have dinner, do you think Veronica can be good someday? I don't know, my love. But I hope she learns to be better. I wrote her a letter in jail. I told her I forgive her because Aiden asked me to. My granddaughter, at 7 years old, already has more wisdom and compassion than many adults. And what did she write back? That she's learning in jail that children shouldn't work like adults, and that she's sad for making me cry. That night, after putting Maya to bed, I reflect on everything we went through. I lost my son for a long time. I destroyed my family relationships. I faced public scrutiny and a media war. But I saved my granddaughter. I gave her back her childhood, her dignity, her right to be loved unconditionally. I don't regret financing that house that I later took back. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction, and that protecting an innocent child is worth any price, even the destruction of everything you thought you knew about family love. Some battles are not fought for revenge. They are fought for love. And true love, the kind that protects and dignifies, always finds a way to win.
After I became a widow, I moved the savings into another account. My son still thinks he's in charge. Have you ever given so much of yourself that you forgot you existed? You cook their meals, fold their laundry, pick up their messes, and one day they call you too forgetful to handle your own life. I used to run this household. Every bill, every detail, every holiday. Now they hand me instructions like I'm a child. They say it's for my safety. But I wasn't unsafe. I was just unseen. Until the day I walked into the bank, alone. Until the day I stopped asking and started deciding. This is the story of how I took back the keys to my life. Not with a fight, but with something sharper, clarity. If you've ever felt invisible inside your own family, stay with me. You're not alone, and you're not done yet. My name is Eunice. I'm 73 years old, and I've lived in the same small town in northern Michigan since 1974. Most people around here know me from church or the farmer's market. Some just know me as Craig's mom. And for a long time, that was fine. But something happens when your world starts shrinking, when your decisions get double-checked, your money gets reviewed, and your name starts fading behind your son's email signature. This story isn't dramatic. No one screamed. No one slammed doors. But something did break. And I think it was the illusion that love and control are the same thing. So, if you're someone who's ever sat quietly while someone else explained what's best for you, I invite you to listen, not just to what happened, but to how I came back to myself. Subscribe if this speaks to you, because no one should grow old feeling erased. That morning, the silence in the kitchen was louder than ever. For the first time in 50 years, I brewed coffee for one. I didn't realize how mechanical marriage had made my mornings. I knew which burner to click first, how many scoops of coffee grounds he liked, which cupboard he always left cracked open because he insisted the hinges were off. Every little habit was still there, lingering in the house like the scent of wood polish and winter air. I moved through the routine slowly, careful not to bump the same corner he always did when coming in with the mail. The air outside was still, no birdsong, just that kind of cold that makes every sound feel muted. I sat at the kitchen table in my robe, hands wrapped around the chipped mug he gave me on our 25th anniversary. It had a cartoon dog on it. He thought it was hilarious. I hated it for about a week, then never drank from anything else again. I didn't cry that morning. The tears had come and gone in waves after the funeral. I think I've reached the stillness that comes after a long storm. Not peace, just quiet. Loretta knocked on the back door like she always did. 2 short taps, 1 long. She never used the front. Said it felt too formal, like she was visiting a stranger. I opened the door before she could finish the pattern. "Morning," she said, her breath visible in the cold. She held 2 paper cups from Edna's. "Got yours with just a splash of cream." I remembered. I nodded and stepped aside. Loretta had a way of entering quietly, like she was stepping into a memory instead of a house. We sat in silence for a bit, the kind of silence that doesn't demand anything. She set the cups on the table and folded her gloves into her coat pocket. "Do you sleep at all?" she asked eventually. "Enough," I lied. She didn't press. Just took a sip of coffee and stared out the window like she was expecting the snow to tell her something. "The place looks the same," she said. "You haven't moved anything." I didn't see the point. She glanced at the envelope of sympathy cards on the counter. "You gonna open those?" I shook my head. A long pause. "Not today," I added. She reached for her cup again, tapped the rim lightly. "Have you thought about the accounts yet? You know, now that it's just you?" I looked down at my coffee. The swirl of cream had settled into a pale cloud. "I haven't touched any of that," I said. Still in both our names. Loretta leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Honey, I don't mean to sound harsh, but if you don't hold the keys, someone else will lock the door on you." That was Loretta's way. She never dressed her advice in soft fabric. She delivered it like a quilt with no batting, rough but warm. "I don't know where to start," I admitted. "I never handled the banking, never had to." "You're not helpless, Eunice. You've just never been invited to the table." The house creaked as the heat kicked in. I hadn't realized how cold I was until that moment. Loretta finished her coffee and stood. "Well, I'm headed to the market. I need eggs. Do you want anything?" "No, I'm good. Call me if you change your mind. About the eggs or the accounts." I walked her to the door, watched her steps fade into the white sidewalk, coat flapping gently in the wind. The moment she turned the corner, I closed the door and stood still in the foyer. Something inside me moved. Something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not grief, just a dull flicker of self. That evening, while washing the last dish from dinner, I remembered the bottom drawer of the file cabinet, the one with the rubber band around the handle. He'd always told me, "That's just the boring stuff. No need for you to mess with it." After I dried my hands, I walked into the spare room, knelt on the old carpet, and pulled open the drawer. It creaked like it hadn't been opened in a decade. Inside, old checkbooks, insurance policies, joint accounts, mortgage papers, folders labeled with dates and clipped receipts, every bit of our life together, alphabetized and forgotten. I sat on the floor for a long time, the cold seeping through my slippers. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe proof that I hadn't imagined it all. The trust, the structure, the belief that someone else always knew best. I hadn't looked at those papers in years, but that night, I laid them all out on the table. I didn't know where to begin, so I started with the account statements. There were paper trails going back 25 years, each month carefully printed, each transaction noted. He always liked to keep things tidy. Not for me, not to share, just tidy for the sake of it. My name was there, printed right beside his, but I had no memory of ever signing those forms. I suppose I must have. At some point in our early days before Craig was even born, when we still believed life would be simple and predictable, he filled out the papers, told me where to sign, and I signed. Most of the balances hadn't changed in years. Money just sat there. No withdrawals, no transfers, just quiet accumulation, as if he'd prepared for something but never told me what. Retirement, emergencies, the unknown. Maybe he thought dying first was his last act of responsibility. There was something strangely comforting in those numbers, familiar, steady, but now they felt like secrets he never meant to keep. I stacked the papers by type, checking, savings, retirement, separate piles. I made a list in my notebook, the one I used for recipes and reminders. It felt strange writing Bank of Pine River next to grocery, whole milk, and Monday, trash bins out. But I needed to see it all in one place. Something real, something mine, even if it had been his first. Halfway through sorting, I found a folder I didn't recognize. Not one of his usual ones. It was labeled Eunice Trust. I sat up straighter. I opened it slowly. Inside was a document, a trust agreement. He'd set it up 5 years ago, quietly, privately. I flipped through the pages, feeling a pulse behind my ears. It named me as the beneficiary, of course, but it also named Craig as the successor trustee. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I had a feeling I wouldn't like it. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control, about how much I had unknowingly surrendered over the years, about how easily someone I loved could assume I wouldn't or shouldn't be in charge of my own life. I closed the folder and rested my hand on it. I thought about Craig, not cruel, not heartless, just certain that he was supposed to lead, certain that I was meant to follow. That's what scared me more than anything. Not that he wanted to take over, but he thought it was already done. Later that night, I made myself a cup of tea and stood at the back window. The snow was falling again, soft and quiet, the kind that made the whole town hush. Craig had called the day before, left a voicemail. "Hey, Mom, I'll come by Sunday. We can go over everything. Bank stuff, house title, maybe talk about selling the side lot. It's probably too much for you now." He said it kindly, like he always did, like a son who thinks he's doing the right thing. I didn't call back. I remembered what Loretta had said. "You're not helpless. You've just never been invited to the table." And I realized she was right. I hadn't been invited. But maybe it was time I pulled up a chair anyway. That thought stuck with me as I cleared the table, stacked the documents, and placed the trust folder back into the drawer. This time on top, not hidden. I washed the mug with the cartoon dog, dried it carefully, and placed it back in the cabinet facing forward. I hadn't looked at those papers in years, but that night, I laid them all out on the table. I sat there a long time after the table was covered in paper. It was a strange thing, looking at the architecture of a life. Not the people, not the photographs, not the memories, but the infrastructure. The ledgers, the numbers, the notations written in margins, the little reminders he left himself. Transfer $200 for propane. Don't forget the December CD. He'd written in blue ink, always in all caps. I used to tease him for that. Said it looked like he was shouting at the bank. He'd grin and say, "Well, sometimes you have to." Now the handwriting felt like a fingerprint pressed into every sheet. It was oddly tender, strangely intimate. I traced one of the notes with my finger and wondered if he ever imagined I'd be reading them alone. The furnace kicked on again. That old rattle. The same one that drove him nuts every winter and he never got around to fixing. I thought of the hundreds of things like that. Tiny chores, unfinished, unnoticed, yet somehow holding up the rhythm of our days. I got up and turned on the radio. Static. Then the familiar voice of the late-night host from the AM station out of Allentown. He was talking about snowfall levels and how early the river was freezing this year. I let him talk, just for the comfort of another voice in the room. I wasn't ready for quiet again. There was still so much I didn't know. About accounts, about legal forms, about what any of it meant. But I didn't feel afraid, just unfinished, like I'd walked into a room that had been locked for years, and now I was finally flicking on the lights. I folded the papers neatly, grouping them by type, then put them back in their folders. I wrote myself a short list. Learn what trustee means. Call Loretta. Refill coffee filters. I wasn't making a plan yet, but I was preparing to. That mattered. Craig brought his laptop over like it was a briefcase full of solutions. All I brought was banana bread. He called it a check-in visit, like I was a client and he was managing something official. Tina was with him, of course. She always came when he asked, but I never quite knew if she wanted to. Her coat was still buttoned when she sat down on the edge of the couch. I had set out plates and napkins, made coffee just the way they liked it. His black, hers with a teaspoon of sugar. The banana bread was a little overbaked on the edges, but it was still warm. I didn't offer advice or ask questions. I just placed the plate between them and said, "Still your favorite, right?" Craig didn't touch it. He had already opened his laptop before he'd even unzipped his coat. The screen cast a cold blue glow over the living room. The gas heater ticked behind us, trying its best to keep the cold out. "So," he said, fingers tapping the trackpad. I put together a rough plan. Nothing complicated. Just some basics to get ahead of everything. His voice had that steady cadence people use in meetings when they think they're the smartest in the room. I nodded, just once. I'd learned from years of church committees and bake sale planning that sometimes the best way to manage a conversation is to say as little as possible. He clicked through colorful pie charts and tables. "This is what I project for the next 12 months. Fixed costs, property taxes, utilities. We're looking at a pretty consistent expense pattern." "We are?" I asked gently. "Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you and I. It's your budget, but I figured I'd oversee it so you don't have to stress." He meant well, or at least, he thought he did. I could hear Loretta's voice in the back of my head. "If you don't hold the keys," Craig went on, talking about consolidating the 2 checking accounts into one, said it would make it easier for us to track things. I wasn't sure when the shift happened, from me to us, but it was there, woven into his words, soft and assuming. Tina finally took a piece of banana bread, broke off a corner, and placed it back on her napkin. Her eyes stayed on the rug. She didn't say anything, didn't meet mine. That told me more than any word could have. Craig clicked again. "I've also looked into transferring some of the savings into a low-risk investment, just something to keep it growing while it sits. Right now, inflation's basically eating it alive. That sounds efficient, I said, sipping my coffee. He looked pleased. Exactly. That's the point. We just need to simplify. I think I'll have you sign a few forms. Nothing urgent, but I can bring them next week. I smiled and reached for another slice of banana bread. You've really thought it through. He leaned back like a man who'd closed a deal. It's what Dad would have done. I nodded again, this time slower. After a few more clicks, he closed the laptop with a satisfied thump. That's all for now. I'll send you a summary by email. Oh, and I created a shared folder, so we can both track changes. Tina stood before he did. She brushed crumbs off her skirt, still not looking up. Thank you for the bread, she said quietly. I walked them to the door, hugged her a second longer than usual. She let me. Craig patted my shoulder like I was a pet, like I should be grateful. We're a good team, Ma. I didn't say anything. When the door shut behind them, I stood in the foyer holding the empty coffee cup. The heater kicked on again, and the house creaked. That old wood sound that always felt like home, and suddenly didn't. I washed the mugs and set them back in the cabinet. Everything went where it always had. The left side for coffee, the right side for tea. It's funny what habits stay even when the people don't. I stood at the kitchen sink a while longer than I needed to. The water had gone lukewarm, but I didn't mind. The weight of Craig's words lingered, not because they were cruel, but because they were so confidently delivered, like the way a man might speak to someone standing in a hole, offering a ladder he built without asking if she wanted to climb out in the first place. It wasn't new. Not really. That tone, that certainty, it had just never bothered me before. Maybe it was Loretta's voice in my head again. Maybe it was the drawer full of papers I had finally dared to touch. Or maybe it was the way Tina's eyes stayed fixed on the floor, as if she too recognized the pattern but didn't know how, or didn't dare, to break it. I dried my hands and walked back to the living room. The couch cushions still held their weight. His laptop had left a faint imprint on the coffee table, a smudge I wiped away without thinking. Then I sat down with my notebook. It was just a lined spiral, half full of recipes, birthdays I hadn't updated in years, and grocery lists I never remembered to bring. But that night, it became something else. I started writing. Not thoughts, not feelings, just facts. What I remembered. Which banks? What we used them for. The mortgage lender we'd used back in '89. The certificate of deposit he'd mentioned one winter when propane prices had gone up. The numbers were fuzzy, but the names weren't. I remembered them because I'd heard them in passing, sitting at the table while he did the taxes, or reading a notice he'd tossed in the recycling without opening. I flipped back a few pages and wrote, in capital letters, what I actually know. And then underneath, enough to begin. The pen felt good in my hand, steady. I wrote slowly, not to be careful, but to be deliberate. A call came just after 9. Loretta. I recognized the ringtone she'd made me assign to her, some jazzy ringtone that annoyed me, which of course made her love it more. I answered and sat on the edge of the bed, curling the notebook into my lap. How'd it go? She asked. Just like you'd expect, I said. Craig showed up with charts, didn't he? He had categories. Loretta laughed the way only someone who had raised 2 sons could. You okay? I am. Actually, I think I'm ready. For what? For a change. There was a pause. Then her voice softened. Listen, there's a local bank, Pine River. I worked there part-time after retirement. They've got a service for widows. Helps them manage accounts privately. Doesn't go through family. I can connect you if you want. I looked down at my notebook. At the list. In the words I had just written. enough to begin. I think I'd like that, I said. Loretta didn't respond right away. Then, you don't have to do it all at once. Just do the first part. Call them. We talked for a few minutes more, mostly about nothing. Then she said goodnight and hung up. I stayed sitting on the bed for a while. The heater had clicked off, and the silence returned, but it didn't feel as heavy as before. I picked up my phone and opened the web browser, found the bank's website, looked for a contact form, then I closed it. I didn't want to write. I wanted to speak. I dialed the number and waited. A woman answered, bright, cheerful. Her name was Carly. I told her I was recently widowed and needed to understand what options were available for someone like me. She said she was happy to help and that Thursdays were quiet if I wanted to come in. I scheduled an appointment. Thursday, just me and the papers. After they left, I noticed the way the cushions had sunk under their weight. The room felt smaller somehow, even though it was finally quiet again. I stood there holding 2 empty mugs and watched the front door long after it had closed. Not because I was hoping they'd turn back, but because I wasn't ready to return to stillness. There was something unnerving about being spoken to so confidently about your own life, like watching someone rearrange furniture in a house they don't live in. Craig never once asked how I felt about anything he laid out on that spreadsheet. He didn't ask what I wanted. He assumed ease was my goal. That simple meant surrender. Maybe that was the part that stung. Not the numbers, not the planning, but the assumption that I had nothing left to say about it. I walked back into the living room and picked up one of the paper napkins Craig had used. A faint ring of coffee stained the edge. I threw it out. Slowly, then I sat down, not because I was tired, but because I needed to take up space again, in my own home. The banana bread sat untouched on the plate. I cut a slice for myself and ate it slowly, not out of hunger, but out of something else, something closer to reclaiming. Years ago, when Craig was still in high school, I remembered baking that same bread after his first heartbreak. He'd come home, dropped his backpack by the door, and said nothing for hours. I left a slice in the microwave for him. No note, no lecture, just warmth. That's what mothers do. Now, he sat in the same house, a grown man, telling me where my money should go as if warmth no longer mattered, only structure. That wasn't his fault entirely. I had handed over so much for so long. Not just money, responsibility, decisions, space. I let him believe he needed to steer, even when the road was mine to walk. I looked at the clock. It wasn't even noon, but the sun had already shifted. That long, slanted light you only get in cold months. It stretched across the rug and landed on the armchair where he'd sat, explaining my finances to me like I was a client, or worse, like I was a child. I wasn't angry. I was aware, fully, finally aware. I stood and folded the blanket on the couch, straightened the pillows, picked up his empty coffee cup and washed it again, even though it was already clean. Then I opened the window a crack, just enough to let the cold air in, just enough to clear the room. I wore my tan coat and my old boots. The more invisible I looked, the better. They were scuffed at the toe and stiff from last winter's salt, but they felt solid. I liked that. The coat still smelled faintly like the attic where I kept it. That mixture of cedar, old paper, and a little dust. I'd hung it out on the back porch for an hour the night before, just to let it breathe. It didn't matter. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. The parking lot was nearly empty when we pulled in. Loretta stayed in the car, engine humming low. She didn't say much on the drive, just let the radio play softly. Old country songs about trains and time gone by. Her hands rested on the wheel like she wasn't really holding it, more like she was giving it permission to guide itself. I sat there for a moment before going in. checked the appointment time again on the card Carly had given me. 10 until a.m., Thursday, my name in tidy print. I folded the card back into my coat pocket. Inside, the bank smelled like pine air freshener, the kind that tried a little too hard. There was a basket of red and white mints on the counter, and a pen chained to one of those little stands, clicking faintly when touched. The chairs were vinyl, the color of weak coffee. Carly came out right on time. Mid-30s, hair pulled back, blouse tucked into slacks. She smiled like someone used to offering comfort, but not sure whether it would be received. I liked her instantly. "Mrs. Winslow?" she said. "Eunice," I replied. "Just Eunice, please." She led me to a small office with a low window. There were 2 chairs, a desk, and a printer humming somewhere nearby. She asked it to act if I wanted coffee or tea. I said no. I just wanted to begin. She opened a file on her computer, clicked through a few screens, then looked at me. "I understand you're interested in opening a private account?" she asked. "I am," I said, "separate from any family involvement, just me." She blinked, then smiled politely. "Of course, that's common these days. Do you have your statements with you?" I handed her the folder I'd prepared. It wasn't fancy, just copies of the most recent account balances, a few printouts I'd made at the library, and the notes I'd scribbled into the margins the night before. She leafed through them with a little furrow in her brow, not confused, just surprised. "You're very organized." I didn't answer that. I'd never considered myself organized, just careful. There's a difference. We reviewed each account one by one. I told her what I knew, what I wasn't sure of, and what I wanted. I said it plainly, like laying out grocery items on a belt. No apologies, no explanations, just facts. She nodded after everything I said, typing quickly. When she reached the end of my notes, she paused. "Would you like to move all of these today?" "Yes," I said. "All right," she said, smiling again. "That's very doable." The transfer process took longer than I expected, but not because it was difficult. Carly was thorough. She double-checked routing numbers, verified balances, and made polite small talk while the computer loaded page after page. I nodded along, mostly watching her hands move with practiced confidence. At one point, she looked up. "Just to confirm, you're the sole authorized user on all these accounts going forward?" "Yes," I said. "Just me." She paused again, as if that deserved more conversation. But when I didn't offer any, she didn't push. "You know," she said after a moment, "most folks your age who come in for this kind of thing usually bring a son or daughter, or at least ask them to review the paperwork." "I didn't forget," I said. She smiled. "Right, just checking." She printed a few documents for signature. The pages were warm from the machine, and the pen clicked faintly as I wrote my name in the assigned boxes. Carly turned each page with care, placing them in a neat stack when I finished. "That's it," she said. "You're all set. The new account is active. The transfers are in process. You'll get confirmation by mail." I nodded. "Do you want a temporary debit card?" she asked. "No rush," I said. "I'm used to cash. I just wanted things clear." "They are," she said, handing me the last form. "You've got a very clean setup now." We stood. I reached into the peppermint bowl on her desk and took one, just to have something in my hand. "Thank you, Carly." "My pleasure," she said. "Really." Outside, the clouds had settled low over Pine River, the sky the color of pewter. Loretta was still waiting in the Buick, one hand on the wheel, the other wrapped around a styrofoam cup. She didn't roll down the window, just looked at me and raised her brows. I got in, peppermint still in my mouth, the paper crinkling in my pocket. "Well?" she asked. "I did it," I said. She nodded once, like that was enough. "Halfway down Main Street," she asked, "were you scared?" I looked out the window as the town passed by in slow motion. The diner with its chipped awning, the gas station with flags fluttering in the wind, the pharmacy that always seemed to change ownership but never its beige sign. "I was," I said, "but not anymore." When I got home, the light in the kitchen had gone gray. I made tea without turning on the overheads, just a little counter lamp. Something about soft light made the quiet feel kinder. I sat with my cup, slowly unwinding the peppermint into a napkin. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from Craig. "Hey, Mom, we should talk more about the land titles. Let's meet soon. He doesn't know what's changed." I sat at the kitchen table long after the tea had gone cold. Not because I had anything more to plan. I didn't. Everything that needed doing was done. The folders were back in the drawer. The papers were signed. My name alone was now enough. But even with the practical matters settled, something else had started moving inside me. Slow and unfamiliar. It wasn't a relief, not exactly. And not pride either. It was quieter than that, like a lamp that had been turned on in a far room of a house I'd forgotten I owned. I thought about the first time Craig ever filled out a check for me. I'd just come home from the hospital. He was 12. I had a cast on my leg and painkillers that made everything a little foggy. He sat with my checkbook open on his lap, tongue sticking out the corner of his mouth while he copied my handwriting, careful and small. Back then, it felt like trust. It felt like help. But help has a way of staying too long at the table. Now I was the one watching the numbers. I knew what my heating bill ran in January. I knew the tax line on my retirement statement. Maybe I couldn't talk in spreadsheets the way Craig did, but I'd learned to read between the lines. Outside, the mail truck drove past and paused at the end of the block. I watched it through the window, letting my eyes blur until the red, white, blue colors became one soft stripe. When I went to the cupboard for a new tea bag, I found myself clearing a spot. Moving tins I hadn't opened in months, rearranging shelves, throwing out the old dusty cinnamon sticks I kept for show. It wasn't about tea anymore. It was about space, about what stayed and what no longer had to. On a whim, I pulled open the bottom drawer where Craig had shoved an old accordion folder years ago, the one labeled Mom Stuff. Inside were expired warranties, instruction booklets for appliances I no longer owned, and a handwritten budget he'd made when Martin was still alive, color-coded with projected expenses, and a note in the margin. "Let's simplify." I smiled without warmth. It had always been about simplifying, for him. I set the folder on the counter and opened the trash bin, then paused. Not because I had doubts, but because I realized something. Letting go of someone else's version of help doesn't have to be loud. I closed the folder again, not with hesitation, but with intent, and slipped it onto the very back shelf of the hall closet. Out of sight, out of reach, where it belonged. That night, before bed, I added one more line to my notebook. Tomorrow, clean out the top drawer in the bedroom. Not because it needed it, but because I did. Craig showed up with a folder and a plan. I already had one too, just better hidden. He walked in like he always did, wiping his feet on the mat, but never asking if it was a good time. Tina followed behind him, arms crossed, eyes darting around like she wasn't sure if she wanted to be here. I'd set the table with a plate of oatmeal cookies and a pot of tea. It wasn't a special occasion, but I'd been raised to receive guests with something warm. Even when the guests came with spreadsheets, Craig put the folder down like it was a binder of gospel truth, manila, thick with dividers. "So, I've been thinking more about the land, he said, pulling out a color-coded map. You're sitting on a lot of value here, Mom. And if we act before next quarter, there's potential for some serious return. He didn't even glance at the pot roast dish in the sink, the tea kettle on the stove, the smell still lingering like it might try to soften something. I looked into a couple firms who specialize in rural parcels. They'd handle everything. Clean sale, no stress. We'd retain a portion, of course, but funnel the rest into a structured trust. That way, you don't have to worry about taxes or management. I nodded slowly, like someone being walked through the benefits of a timeshare. That's a lot to take in, I said. He opened another page, showing bar charts. You don't need to worry about all the mechanics, Mom. I'd manage the logistics. Tina and I already talked about streamlining the process. I turned to Tina. She looked down at her lap. Would you like some tea? I asked, and please, she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Craig didn't want tea. He wanted control. But I poured him a cup anyway. I sat down across from him and folded my hands. Let him keep talking. He had more charts, more projections, more words like liquidate and equity and leveraging current momentum. I let him go on. You see, he said, this isn't just about money. It's about peace of mind. For you, for us. It's about responsible planning. I nodded again, then stood up. Let me show you something, I said. I walked to the kitchen counter where the manila envelope waited, tucked neatly beside the kettle. Not hidden, just uninvited. I picked it up, held it without speaking for a moment. When I returned to the table, I placed it in front of him. He looked at it like it might contain old photos or a recipe. Something benign. What's this? He asked. Documents, I said. Updated ones. He opened the flap and pulled out the first page. Then another. I didn't speak. I watched his eyes scan the headings. Property deeds. Account changes. Everything now listed under my name only. No joint oversight. No co-signatures. He blinked. When did this happen? Last week, I said. I thought it was time I learned how to stand on my own feet again. He didn't respond right away. He set the papers down and reached for his tea, then changed his mind and folded his hands instead. Tina looked at me for the first time since arriving. Her face didn't show shock, more like something else. Curiosity, maybe, or the slow realization that something had shifted. Craig cleared his throat. I didn't realize. I thought we were working on this together. I smiled gently, not to soften the moment, but to hold it steady. I know. That's what made it easy for you to miss what was changing. He nodded slowly, lips pressed together, unsure of his next move. He tapped one finger against the folder like he was trying to summon the right sentence. I knew that look. Martin had it too, when something didn't go the way he'd mapped out on paper. I guess I just thought, Craig began, then trailed off. He glanced at Tina, as if she might offer him a lifeline, but she didn't. Instead, she picked up her teacup, held it close to her chest, and studied me. Are you mad? Craig finally asked. No, I said, with a calmness that even surprised me. Not mad, just done waiting. For what? To be asked. That landed harder than I expected. He blinked a few times, like something stung behind his eyes. But I didn't press. I didn't need to. Silence settled around us like fog. The gas heater clicked in the background. Outside, the trees swayed against a pale winter sky, brittle branches tapping the glass with small reminders that the world went on, regardless of anyone's plans. I stood up, walked to the sink, and started rinsing out the teacups. Not in a rush, not as a dismissal. just to keep my hands moving. Behind me, Craig exhaled. So this is... What, Mom? Are you taking over everything now? No, I said, still facing the sink. Just taking back what I gave away too easily. I turned to face him again. You meant well. I know that. But I gave up too quietly. That's on me. He opened his mouth like he might respond, but Tina spoke instead. I think it's brave, she said softly. Her voice wavered but didn't break. Doing this, it takes guts. Craig looked over at her, startled, but said nothing. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and steam. The pot roast lingered, not strong, just enough to remind us of comfort, of effort made without reward. I dried the cups and returned them to their hooks. Craig stood, folder in hand, still unsure of how to leave this version of the room. The version where I wasn't looking to him for instructions. I thought I was helping, he said finally, quieter this time. Maybe you were, I replied, meeting his eyes. But now, so am I. After Craig and Tina left, the house went quiet in that strange way it does after a conversation leaves the air heavy. The heater kept ticking, steady as breath, and the tea had gone cold on the table. I didn't clean up right away. I stood by the counter for a while, tracing the edge of the envelope he'd left behind. Not the manila one. Mine. The one I'd handed him that told a truth he hadn't expected. There was a version of me that once would have felt guilty for doing it without telling him. That part of me still lived somewhere inside, in the folds of habits and years and maternal instinct, but it didn't run the show anymore. I sat back down and opened my small notebook. The same one I used for grocery lists, church events, notes from phone calls. On the last few pages, I'd begun writing things that mattered only to me. Not lists of chores, but choices. Reasons. Reminders that my life still had direction, even if it didn't orbit around someone else's decisions. I wrote down something Loretta once said that hadn't hit me until today. You don't have to make a scene to make a move. I'd made a move today, and it felt like enough. No fireworks, no shouting, just truth, placed gently on the table between cookies and silence. Later, as the sun slipped down behind the garage and the walls turned amber with dusk, I warmed the leftover pot roast and sat at the table alone. I didn't feel lonely. For the first time in a long while, the quiet didn't feel like absence. It felt like space, like a room I could finally stand in without shrinking. I thought about Tina more than Craig. The way she looked at me before she left. Not pity, not surprise. Something closer to respect. It had caught me off guard. Maybe she'd been waiting too, in her own way, for someone to stand up to him. Or maybe she just needed to see what quiet strength looked like when it finally stopped asking permission. I didn't know. But I knew this. When Craig walked out of this house today, he wasn't the only one carrying a plan. There's a difference between being quiet and being blind. I was never blind. The house made all its usual nighttime sounds, the heater clicking on, the hum of the fridge, a soft creak in the hallway I'd never bothered to fix. I sat up in bed, propped by 2 pillows, with my little notebook open in my lap. The lamp on my nightstand gave off a warm yellow light, the kind that made shadows soft and time feel slower. Outside, the window panes were laced with frost. It would be another cold morning. I should have pulled the heavier quilt down from the closet, but I liked the weight of the one I had. It was the same one Martin and I bought on a trip to Ashland years ago. One of those fall getaways where we didn't really talk about anything deep, just shared meals and walked antique shops like we didn't have bigger things waiting at home. I flipped back through some pages in my notebook. Most were grocery lists, thoughts I'd written while the news played low in the background. But near the middle were pieces from after Martin died, little fragments of thought I'd scribbled down in those early quiet weeks when I wasn't sure what was mine anymore. One entry caught my eye. It was dated 2 months after his funeral. Craig wants to handle the bills. He says it's easier this way. Maybe it is. Maybe I don't want to think. I remember writing that. I remember how tired I felt all the time. Back then, handing things over felt like relief. But it wasn't the first time I'd done it. Martin used to say I didn't need to work. What would be the point? He'd ask, pouring coffee and reading headlines. You'd make a couple $100 a month and miss every church event. At the time, it sounded like concern. Maybe it was. But it also closed a door I'd quietly hoped might open. There was a boutique on Main that offered me part-time hours once, just a few afternoons a week. I was excited, really excited. But Martin smiled and said, "Don't be silly. We're doing fine." I didn't argue. I just called and said thank you, but no. I folded that want into a corner of myself and kept moving. That's what you do when you're trying to be at peace in someone else's day. But silence isn't the same as peace. I see that now. I reached for the mug on my nightstand. The tea had gone lukewarm, but it still tasted of chamomile and honey, comforting in a way I didn't realize I still needed. My phone buzzed softly beside the lamp. A text from Loretta. "Still awake? I just remembered something. Call if you're up." I dialed without thinking. She picked up on the first ring. "Did I wake you?" I asked. "No," she said. "I was watching some old movie on the Hallmark Channel. You know how they are. Same plot, different town." I smiled. "Background noise." "Exactly." A pause. "Are you doing all right?" "I'm writing," I said. "About before. About the times I said yes when I meant no." "Ah," Loretta murmured. "That's a lot of years." "It is." There was a kind of hush between us, the gentle kind that doesn't need filling. Then she said, "The neighborhood council has a seat open. Not sure if you'd care, but they need someone who actually listens. Someone who doesn't think the world ends at the edge of their driveway." I blinked. "Why are you telling me?" "Because you've listened to everyone else for 50 years. Maybe it's time someone listened to you." I didn't answer right away. My fingers traced the edge of the notebook page. I'd just written. That wasn't a weakness. That was love. But love doesn't mean silence forever. Loretta didn't push. She never did. "Just think about it," she added. "Good night, Eunice." "Good night." I sat there a while longer, the phone back on the nightstand, the tea now cold. Then I looked out through the frosted window and said aloud, to no one in particular, "Maybe I would." I leaned back against the pillows and closed the notebook, letting my hands rest on top of it. My fingers were still warm from holding the mug, and the weight of the leather cover felt familiar, like something I should have held onto a long time ago. It's strange how many things we let slide, thinking they're small. One conversation here, one missed chance there, but they add up. They shape the corners of your life until you look around and realize the walls were never built for you. You just decorated them anyway. Martin wasn't a cruel man. He was just certain about everything. That certainty was comforting when I was young and unsure. It made life feel ordered, predictable, but it also left no room for my own doubt, or curiosity, or questions. I don't think he ever meant to shrink me. But that's the thing about strong personalities. They don't always realize who they're standing in front of. I remember once, early in our marriage, we went to a church potluck. I'd brought a rhubarb crumble, and everyone seemed to love it. One of the ladies from the women's circle asked me if I'd thought about doing a recipe column for the bulletin. I was flattered, giddy even. I told Martin in the car. He chuckled, said, "A recipe column? You'll have more time once the kids are grown. Let's not pile on now. Just like that, the idea was gone, and I let it go. Not because I didn't want it, but because I'd already learned what kinds of ideas got the green light. But I wasn't blind. I knew exactly what was happening, even if I didn't have the words for it then. Back then, I called it harmony. Later, I called it survival. Now, I just call it what it was. Putting myself second for so long, I forgot what first even looked like. I got up to refill my tea. The kitchen was cold, quiet. I didn't bother turning on the overhead light, just a small one over the stove. It cast a gentle glow on the counter where the day's mail still sat. I sorted through it absent-mindedly, but my thoughts stayed elsewhere. I thought of Craig and his folder, his perfect spreadsheets, and how he'd looked at me the other day, confused, like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. And Tina, poor Tina. She hadn't said much, but I could tell she was listening. The way her eyes followed me when I walked out of the room. The way she held her purse close, like it gave her something to hold on to in the silence. I know that feeling. I brought the tea back to my room and settled again under the quilt. A few more lines made it into my notebook, half thoughts more than full sentences. Maybe I stopped dreaming before I meant to. Power isn't loud. I am still here. The bedside clock ticked softly. There's a kind of courage that doesn't show up in headlines or photo albums. The kind you build slowly, quietly, over years of choosing kindness when your throat burns to scream. That's what I had. That's what I still have. And now that I've remembered it, I'm not setting it down again. I used to think that aging meant softening, that somehow, with each year, the sharp edges would dull. The fears, the regrets, the buried things, until what was left was just peace. But I see now it's not about softening. It's about sharpening into yourself. Finally, all those years, I played the part, smiled at dinner tables, packed lunches with notes, turned the other cheek when I should have raised my voice. And I told myself that's what strong women do. They hold the line. They keep things together. But maybe strong women also leave the room when it no longer fits. Maybe they rewrite the rules when no one's looking. I reached down and pulled an old photo from the drawer. It was me at 23, standing next to Martin outside a gas station on the way to the lake. He had his arm around me, and I was half smiling at something out of frame. It took me a moment to recognize myself. Not because I looked so different, though I did, but because I remembered exactly how I felt at that moment. Like a passenger, like someone waiting to be told what came next. I touched the edge of the photo. She was brave in her own way, brave enough to love, to raise a family, to make a life out of what she had. But I wished I could have told her what I know now, that she didn't have to ask permission to be whole. Outside, the wind had picked up. The branches tapped lightly against the window pane. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a car pass, its tires hushing along the wet road. I thought of Loretta's voice on the phone earlier. They're looking for someone like you. And how easily I'd laughed it off at first. But even now, that line kept humming underneath everything. Someone like me. Someone who's seen things come and go. Someone who knows what it means to stay quiet for too long. Someone who might finally be ready to speak. I looked around my bedroom, not just as the place I ended each day, but as the space where I'd begun to return to myself. The light from the lamp was soft. My tea had gone cold again. Maybe I would say yes. Maybe I already had, in the quiet. They thought I just came to listen. Turns out, I came to speak. The chairs in Cedar Hollow's community hall were still the folding kind that pinched your legs if you sat wrong. I picked one close to the back at first. Habit more than preference. Old instincts. The kind you don't notice until you try doing something different. I was wearing my soft gray sweater, the one with the pearly buttons that Martin never liked much. Said it made me look too serious. I'd put on lipstick too. Not red. Just enough to say I hadn't faded yet. Loretta was already there when I arrived. She'd saved me a seat near the front, patting the chair beside her like a sister in church. I hesitated only a second before walking down the aisle, past a dozen casual smiles and quiet nods from people who, for years, hadn't known more about me than my banana bread and Christmas cards. They smiled the way small-town folks do when they can't decide if something's changed or if it's always been this way, and they're just now noticing. The meeting opened with the usual business: streetlight repairs, lawn complaints, a bake sale that needed volunteers. The woman chairing the meeting, Linda something, I think, cleared her throat and said there was still an open seat on the neighborhood council. "If anyone's interested," she added, looking around like she didn't expect any hands. I raised mine. The silence that followed was polite, not stunned. A pause long enough for people to adjust. Then Linda nodded, smiled a little. "Mrs. Rollins?" "Yes," I said. I stood. My knees were steady, my voice too. "I'd like to be considered for the seat." Somewhere behind me, a styrofoam cup squeaked in someone's grip. Linda gestured toward the front. "Would you like to say a few words?" I walked up there without a paper, without a plan, and without the tremble I used to carry when I had to speak in front of people. I just looked at the faces, some familiar, some not, and let the words find their way. "I used to think I didn't have much to offer," I began, not because anyone told me that outright, but because it's easy to think that when your work isn't the kind people put plaques on. A few heads nodded. I was a wife, a mother. I kept a home. I clipped coupons and made do. I listened a lot. To neighbors, to family, to the space between arguments. I paused, not for drama, just to breathe. "And it turns out," I said, "that a lifetime of listening adds up. It teaches you where things crack and where they hold. And maybe that counts for something." When I sat down, Loretta reached over and gave my hand a quick squeeze. She didn't say a word, and she didn't need to. The vote was a show of hands. Almost everyone raised theirs. Someone clapped first, then another. Then the room filled with the kind of gentle applause that feels less like celebration and more like agreement. Like people saying, "Yes, this makes sense." I felt it in my chest more than in my ears. Afterward, there was instant coffee in a big metal urn that tasted like burnt beans and memories. Loretta and I stood by the bulletin board, sipping slowly, watching the crowd thin. Someone had posted a flyer for a lost cat, another for a quilting class. There was a notice about pothole repairs and a yellowed announcement from last spring that no one had taken down. "I think you found your lane," Loretta said, not looking at me. "I think maybe I did," I said, and I meant it. We didn't linger. Outside, the air was sharp enough to bite. I pulled my coat tighter, fingers brushing over the keys in my pocket. Real and otherwise. The wind had picked up since we'd gone inside. Leaves rattled against the pavement like they couldn't settle. Loretta offered me a ride home, but I told her I wanted to walk a bit. Let the air work on me. She didn't argue, just nodded and said, "You know where I am." The walk back was only 10 minutes, but it took longer. My boots scuffed the sidewalk in slow rhythm. Streetlights buzzed above me, and every porch I passed seemed to hum with some small, warm domestic life. A television glow here, a dog barking there. I didn't feel outside of it. Not anymore. When I got home, the house greeted me with its usual quiet. No beeping alarms, no recorded messages blinking red. Just the familiar click of the lock, the low sigh of settling walls. I turned the lamp on in the living room, the one with the needlepoint shade Martin had always hated, and hung up my coat. The manila folder was still where I'd left it that morning, next to the teapot. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Everything inside was already done. The transfers, the titles, the signatures, all legal, all mine. I brewed a small pot of chamomile tea and brought it into the den, where the old recliner waited like an old friend who didn't need explanations. I sat, let the warmth of the mug soak into my palms. For the first time in months, I felt something settle inside me that wasn't fear or worry or calculation. Then the email came. My laptop made that little chime it does when something new arrives. I hadn't been expecting anything, and for a second I debated ignoring it. But old habits, the kind that check in, check up, double check, die slower than pride. It was from Craig. The subject line was simple. Sorry. I opened it. Mom, I've been thinking a lot. I didn't realize how much you were holding up. For all of us. I know I came in swinging, trying to help and manage things. But the truth is, I wasn't seeing you. I get it now. At least I'm starting to. You always made things look easy, and I mistook that for simple. But it's not. It never was. I'm sorry. Love, Craig. I read it twice. Not because I didn't believe it, but because some part of me needed to feel the words settle. They didn't undo anything. They didn't excuse the months, the years of decisions made around me, not with me. But they were something. And sometimes, something is enough to start again. I didn't reply right away. I closed the laptop softly, as if the silence that followed was worth keeping intact a bit longer. I let the moment be what it was. Unfinished, but real. I got up and went to the closet, pulled my coat on again. The keys were still in the pocket. I didn't jingle them. I didn't raise them like a trophy. I just walked to the door, hand wrapped around the cold metal of the knob. He'll figure it out, I whispered into the hallway, just like I did. Then I stepped outside, into the kind of night that feels like a clean page. They say life settles down when you're older, but I've learned it doesn't settle. It shifts, quietly, sometimes painfully, but always toward truth. After all that's happened, I don't feel bitter, just clearer. I still bake on Sundays. I still keep extra creamer for when Tina visits. But now, I sit at the head of my own table, not waiting to be asked, not hoping to be heard. I make decisions, not excuses. It took me decades to understand this. Sacrifice, when constant and silent, can make people forget you have a voice, even the ones you love, especially them. If any of this feels familiar, if you've spent years putting everyone else first, just remember, you're still here. You still matter. And it's not too late to hold your own keys.